Hello, today I'm going to show you how to make the card trick block. Yep, pretty cool, huh? But I bet if you were like me in the past, you'd look at it and went, ooh, wow, that looks a little complicated and maybe a lot putsy. Guess what? It's not, because I've got a way to do it that doesn't make it complicated or putsy. So stay tuned and I'll show you how. Hi, I'm Wendy Haney. And I'm here to show you that quilting does not need to be intimidating, and it is so much fun. I love to show people to quilt, so stay tuned so you can learn how to. As I said, this block can look a bit intimidating, but it's really not. Now the thing with my method is this is not necessarily super efficient with your fabric, because I'm not cutting a bunch of squares exactly the way we need and then cutting them into triangles and then piecing them. If you go out on YouTube, I'm sure you can find a variety of ways to do this. The method I'm using, yes, takes a little bit more fabric, but I think it will go together a lot faster. And if you need just one block, you're gonna have some leftovers. If you need more blocks, like if you're doing a quilt or a table runner, this could be really efficient. So it's up to you to decide which you'd like to do. Okay, here we have it. We're going to be working with a 12-inch block. A 12-inch block is a nice size. It'll go together fast if you're making a quilt, still put sashing, whatever on it. And it's a really good size to show you what I'm doing. So if you look at this, you'll discover basically it's really a 9-patch, 3 across and 3 down. And so you'll note we have half square triangles in our corners. We have an hourglass in our middle. And then we have 4 of these, I don't know what you call them, tri-square triangles. Basically, it's a half square triangle connected to another half square that you cut in half, which is exactly how we're going to kind of work this. So here we go. Basically, each of these blocks are going to be 4-inch finished or 4.5-inch unfinished. And so that's what we're going to work with as we move forward. You're going to need 5 pieces of fabric. 1 color each for each of your 4 cards, so there's your 4 fabrics, and then your background fabric. So there are the 4 fabrics that you need. I'm sorry, there's the 5 fabrics you need. 4 for your cards and 1 for your background. So what you're going to need is some 5.5-inch blocks and some 5-inch blocks. So, as I mentioned, this is not exactly efficient with your fabric, but the simplest thing to do is cut some strips of 5.5-inch, and then you've got your 5.5-inch blocks, which you need more of them, and then you can trim down and get a few 5-inch blocks. So what you're going to need is 4 5.5-inch blocks of your background fabric and 2 5.5-inch blocks of each of your colors. Then you're also going to need a 5.5-inch block of each of your colors. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the middle and do the half square, we're going to start with the middle and do the hourglass. So the middle of our block is an hourglass block. Now, with this said, get that out of the way, we're going to take a 5.5-inch block of each color. There we go. And get rid of that. And we're going to pair 2 of them together. This is going to make 4 hourglass blocks. And yes, you only need 1. But if you're making a quilt or a table runner, you're going to need more hourglass blocks anyway. So this method, you're making 4 at a time. So we're going to just put them together how you would like them. So I'm going to put my green and my turquoise together and my yellow. And it really doesn't matter which pair you put together, because essentially you're going to end up cutting these in half and putting them back together to get all four. Okay, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to draw a line. Let me get a ruler. How come my rulers are never where I want them to be? Just when I think I'm organized. So we're going to draw a line corner to corner, because actually we're going to make 2 half square triangles to start with. So I'm going to draw a line corner to corner here. Okay, and then we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of the line. Okay, and we're going to do this. There we go. And I'm going to make sure my blocks stay secure. And I've got my front and my back looking good. They're nice and square together. So we're going to go do this. So I'm going to sew 1/4 inch on both sides of the line that I drew. And then we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 half square triangles when we're done. So I'll be back. I took my blocks to the sewing machine and sewed on either side of my line. So now we're going to take my ruler, or sometimes I just take it to the ironing board and use a regular scissors and cut on the line, because you've got a line and it's easy to do that. And then I'm ready to press it right there at the sewing machine. So now we have a couple of half square triangles. We actually have 4 of them, 4 half square triangles. Now, these are not all going to be used for our hourglass. What we're going to do is we're going to trim each of these to 5 inches, and then we're going to put them together and do another sew, and then we're going to trim them again. So I'm going to go press them and get them trimmed up. I went and pressed my squares. And then what you want to do is take one of each color set and just set it aside, because you're not going to need that right now to make your hourglass block. Now you've got 2 of them that are ready to be pressed, and we need to make them into an hourglass block. What you're going to do is actually kind of sew them together. And in that case, we're going to want to sew this way. So obviously you want your seams to match. And then if you open it up like this, you'll see that's what your hourglass is going to look like. And if you want it different, if you don't want your yellow to their green, flip it. And there we go. So I think I want my green and my yellow opposite. So I'm going to match my seams here. And actually, I missed a step. Before we do that, we're going to trim these up. We need to trim these blocks so they're a nice, even 5-inch block. My apologies for missing that. They're pretty doggone close to 5 now. So I've got my OmniGrid ruler, and it has a diagonal line. So I'm going to put the diagonal on my seam and make sure at the bottom here that I have enough all the way around and at the top to do my trimming. Okay, and then we flip it and do the same thing, and in this case, keep that line on your diagonal. In this case, your bottom is going to be right on the 5-inch. So you can just even up those at the bottom. Get this one done lickety-split. And always make sure you press, after you make that first half square triangle block, get it pressed before you trim it up. Everything will be much cleaner that way. And you'll have much more accuracy. Okay, there we go. Okay, now that we have them exactly the same, that's the other thing with this method. Everything we're doing here is going to allow you to have just a little bit extra fabric everywhere. So you're trimming up after you've made your squares. Therefore, you're going to get even better accuracy. Because I don't know about you, I've been quilting forever, but I'm not perfect. And so I much prefer a method to have a little bit more fabric so I can trim up and have my squares much more accurate when I get down to putting them together. Okay, now let's do this again. We're going to match our seams. And then fold it over and go, okay, do I like this? Yep, in this case I do. My green is opposite my yellow. If that wasn't the case, just flip this one. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it that way. I'm gonna match my corners, get my seams in there. Now, we're going to do another half square triangle. So in this case, obviously, you don't want to draw a line on your seam. So you're going to draw your line corner to corner opposite of your seam. And my marker is right here. And sometimes I'll do the marking before I put my squares together, because usually when I mark it, it has a tendency to do a little shifting anyway. And then I'm gonna pin this. And then it looks good on that side, but I always flip it over and go, okay, yep, I'm good on the other side. So now we're gonna take it to the sewing machine, and once again, we've got a line we drew, and you're gonna stitch 1/4 inch on either side. So I did my sewing on either side of the line, and now we're going to cut down the middle. And in this case, I'm going to end up with 2 hourglass blocks. Now, if you took those other 2 blocks that I had you set aside, you could do the exact same thing with this. Just make sure you, if you're gonna use them in the same quilt, that you make sure the layout is exactly the same. So you've got that, and then you put your green, and there we go. So your green and your yellow are opposite. And then if you do the exact same thing with this set of blocks, you'll have 2 more hourglass blocks. We're gonna just work with this set. So I'm gonna just take one of these, since that's all we need right now, and I'm going to press that a little. Now, here in the back, this is the perfect opportunity to do our little pinwheel, where all you do is you get in the middle there and you just twist it a tad. It's really easy. And you'll see you'll end up with a little pinwheel, and your seams are going to be pressed the opposite of each other. This helps eliminate bulk in the middle of this block. Okay, so I'm going to press that just a tad here, because I always press before I trim. Now, as I mentioned, we are dealing with 4-inch blocks. So our pattern is this. So the finished block inside is 4 inches. We needed to cut it 4.5 inches. So we're going to trim this so it's all ready to go. And once again, make sure you've got, I'm using an OmniGrid 6-inch square ruler. So I want to make sure my 4.5 inch, there's plenty around to cut. And I'm also going to want to utilize that angle in the OmniGrid. That's what's so slick with this. And let's see, I can shift this down a little bit to give me a little more trimming at the top. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna get this puppy nice and ready to go for our middle. And do that, and then we're going to flip it over. So in this case, our bottom can match our 4.5 inch line. And now we've still got our good triangle. Our angles, our corners should meet. And there we go. All right, so now we have our hourglass block done. Whoops, whoops. We got a little tab hanging out there. There we go. All right, now we have our middle hourglass block. Wonderful, set that aside. Now we're going to need to make the hourglasses, not the hourglasses, the half square triangles for the outside. Those are the next that are super easy to do. Now, if you're making a whole bunch of these blocks, there is a faster method than this. This method is going to give you 2 of each of these. It's going to give you 2 of the blue, 2 green, 2 yellow, 2 orange. There's another method where for each color, you can do 8 of them at the same time. You'll take about, a 9.75 inch block of your white or your background and 1 of your color, and you can make 8 half square triangles at the same time. There's a link up here that will take you to that video and one in the bottom in the description. So depending on how many blocks you're using, that could be your faster method. But today we're going to, I gotta find my pile of colors, and I'm guessing these are this is the other thing, always double check what color, which squares you're grabbing. Okay, good. These are my 5.5 inch colors. There we go. So here are my 5.5 inch squares, and I'm going to basically combine a background with a color. And you know what? In this case, it's super easy to mark on the background. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm going to draw my line before I even put my colors together. So what I would do is, of course, depending on what your background color is versus the color of your color blocks, you decide which is the easiest for you to mark. And I find often that it's easier to get my mark on here before I put my blocks together. And I've got a white and I've got a pencil colored marker. I'm using the sew line, and in here it actually has multiple colors in there, which is awesome. Whoops, make sure I use the right line. Okay. So there we go. So I've got my lines drawn. So now you're going to just match a background fabric with each of your colors, just like this. And then you're going to do just what you did when we worked with our hourglass. You're going to take this to the sewing machine, and for each of these blocks, you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. And what you're going to end up with is 2 half square triangles of each of these colors with the background. Now that I have all of my blocks that are background fabric and a color, and I sewed on either side of the line, I'm going to trim all those, cut them in half, just like we did before. This is going to get to be old habit, know how to do this. And then what I've discovered, at least with the way I pressed other blocks, pressing to the background fabric actually ended up getting me what I needed later. If it doesn't, sometimes as I start to put blocks together, I have to repress the opposite direction because there's a lot of fabrics in here going different directions. Okay, so I'm going to just finger press this and finger press this. Okay, I'm going to set these aside to press because I've got this other set that I've already pressed. Now, you're going to have 2 of each color, and you're going to want to trim them. One is going to get trimmed to 5 inches, and the other is going to get trimmed to 4.5. So, this is becoming old habit. You've got your ruler, your Omni Grid ruler, get your line, making sure you have room to trim all the way around. That. Get your lines. So there's my 5-inch, and I'm going to put this in a pile. I've already trimmed the others, so now I have a pile of my 5-inch blocks and a pile of my 4.5-inch. So I'm not going to trim my 4.5 because you get the drift. I don't think I need to go through it. Now, your 4.5-inch blocks are what you're going to use in your corners. So you're all set. As soon as I trim these last two colors for my 4.5-inch, I now have my all 4 corners done, and we did our hourglass. So now we're ready to do these tri-color squares that are in the middle. And so in that case, we're going to take one of our 5-inch half square triangles, and we're going to match this up with a, hang on here, with one of the 5-inch colored blocks that we cut at the very beginning. There we go. Therefore, we are not wasting those half square triangles. So you ended up with 2 half square triangles between your background and your color in a 5.5-inch square. And now we're going to combine it with one of your colored squares, and bingo, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get one of those tricolor squares. And what we need to do is I usually grab my hourglass. Here's my hourglass. I haven't fully pressed it yet, but we're going to use this, my hourglass, and I put it in the middle. So as you can see, your hourglass, you need to have your colors appropriate. So here we've got our blue hourglass, so that means we need a blue large triangle here. And then a green. So it kind of depends on how you want to lay this out. Let's set that aside. And what I find helpful is to just lay this out. So we're going to do this. And we're going to do let's do the yellow. Since my yellow's right here, I'm going to need a yellow there, and I'm going to need a orange on this side of it. So I'm going to need to combine my yellow with my orange. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to need to combine my yellow square with a get this right. This is where, I'll admit, this is where the tricky comes in of getting this right. And there we go. There we go. And sometimes it might be beneficial. I will get a sheet for you that has this block laid out in a graph form so that you can then print it out on a printer and get your colors out, because it helps tremendously. Once you've got your grid and you know how the card trick block laid out, and then you choose your colors, then you can lay it out and see. And then when you're doing this block, excuse me, it makes it so much easier to make sure you're getting things right, mixing the right large block with the right half square triangle. So what we're going to do then is we're going to do this. So I'm going to take a break and go and trim the rest of my blocks to 4.5 inch. So then you can see how I'm putting it all together before I go to the sewing machine, because I don't want to do one and then go, oh, did I get that right and it's wrong. So sit tight. I'm going to go trim those up, and then we'll walk through getting these last blocks ready to go. Okay, This is, I'll admit, the trickiest part of this block. And that's why I'm going to give you a diagram to color. What I did is, now that I had one block done, it's really easy. It's easier to see. So I'm going to set this aside, and then, actually, let's see, how can I do this for you? I'm going to put that, yeah, we're just going to go back and forth. So I'm going to set that aside, but I'm going to position, so I would say set aside your coloring so that you can see it, and then position your hourglass block in the middle so it matches your coloring page. Now, what I would suggest you do first is figure out we're going to use our 5-inch half square triangles that we just finished and trimmed up. So essentially though, what we're gonna do, we're gonna match those with a full color block and make, well, essentially we're gonna do this. So what I would suggest you do is fold your half square triangle in half. Fold it so that your seams match. There we go, okay? And then take your 5-inch colored block and fold that in half. Now, you don't wanna press, you don't, just lightly do it. You don't want a seam in there, but it will help you visualize what we're doing. Okay, so let's see here. This here, we've got our hourglass. That means we need a half square of our orange, okay? And then we need the yellow on this side, okay? So we're gonna put this in the middle. We're gonna get our half of our orange, and now we need our yellow. Key thing is getting that yellow in the right direction. See? So now you can see how that's laid out, and it matches our block here, okay? Key thing is you always want that seam going out and your color on the next side here. Okay, so we're gonna do that. So then we're gonna take our blue and we're gonna put that there. Well, somebody got home. And then we're gonna take our yellow and put there. Okay, so there we go. And you know what? Sometimes it also helps to get those half square triangles that you trimmed to 4.5 and put them in your corners. So let's do that. We're gonna put our yellow there, our orange is there, our blue is there, which leads, lost my green, there's my green. This also helps you visualize this as we go. So now here, in order to finish this blue card, we need a blue. So we're gonna put our blue in there. And in order to tie in, we need the green here. So we're gonna take one of our green blocks, and in this case, we need the color to match up with the color. Fold it in half, and that goes in there. Okay, we've got one more to go. So in order to get our green here, we need a full half square of green, and then we've got to tie it up with our orange. And so we're gonna do that. Okay, there we go. It looks good, doesn't it? Sometimes it also helps to then go and take a picture of it. Get your phone out and take a snapshot. Now, we folded all of these, but it's really easy. All you have to do is flip them up, and then pick them up, and pick them up. Pick up this one, pick up that one. Get rid of all the rest of these. Now, these, essentially, we're gonna make half square triangles again. So you're gonna put these together, and then you're gonna draw a line, and it's actually probably easier to do it this way. You're gonna draw a line from corner to corner, just like that, and then you're gonna sew on a 1/4 inch side of both of those. And then we're going to end up with 2 blocks, and I will show you that. So take each of these, and as long as you flip them, so you obviously want to sew opposite of that seam, you are going to be good to go. So we'll see what that looks like after we get all these sewn, marked, sewn, and pressed. I have all of those last blocks sewn, and I've cut most of them, but what you're going to do is you've sewed on either side of the line, and now, just like before, you're going to cut it in half, and you're going to end up with 2 of these. I press towards the half square side of it instead of pressing where I've got a seam, which is why I told you before in pressing the half square triangles in the corner, I press towards the background fabric, as that way these things match better. Okay, so now as you can see, we have 2 of them. You're only going to use 1 of these. But let's go ahead. I'm going to press this quick-like, and then both of these you might as well trim both of them. Yep, so I pressed them, and now we're going to trim both of them. So you've got them, even though you're only going to use 1. So easiest way is to have your angle this way. You get your Omni-Good ruler, your angle there, and we're going to trim these to 4.5 inches. And you're going to want to make sure your 4.5 inch point is here at the bottom and meets the corner there of that triangle, and up there and down here. And making sure you have enough room to trim on all sides. Then we flip it over, and in this case, this corner up here, you want, so you match your 4.5 inch down here. This should be right in the corner with a little bit of a wiggle room to trim. Okay, so we have that one, and I'm gonna quick lickety-split do this one so it's done. Because even though it's the easiest way to do it at this point, is get them both trimmed. And that way you've got them. Who knows where you might find benefit in using them. And then you don't have to figure out which to use ahead of time. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, we have 2 very different blocks. Your background fabric is opposite. And that's why I say you're only going to need 1 of these squares. So I've got the rest of mine. So let's start putting our block together, because this is going to help you know which one of those you're going to use. We're going to put our hourglass in the middle. Excuse me. And then the easiest thing to remember is here's my yellow, which means my yellow half square triangle needs to be right above it. And here's my orange. So my orange half square triangle needs to be there. Green there, and we're a little off center here. There we go. Boy, I'm like totally off here. There we go, there we go. And our turquoise. Okay, so turquoise, yellow, orange, green. Now we're ready to put in our final 4 blocks, which is what you just made. Easiest thing to do is look at what do we need to fit in here to get our card to work. Well, yellow, that means we need a yellow right there in that corner, a big yellow. But we also need a turquoise down here. So that means you need the block that matches your turquoise and your yellow. If we had used this other one, you could get your yellows to match, but then, oops, that looks a little funky, right? So once you lay it out, it's going to become obvious that you've picked the wrong square. So toss that one aside, and we put that one in there. Okay, now let's finish this one. We need a big turquoise here, and we need a green there. Okay, there we go. Toss that other one because I don't need it. Let's see, we've got my orange one. So I need a yellow here and a big orange there. Well, that's not going to do it, but this one will. Okay, toss that one. Now our final one. I need a big green and my orange up there. So there's my big green and there's my orange. There you go. That wasn't so hard, was it? It's just about getting each of your blocks made and then understanding how these need to go together to pull in the right block for that. Now your block is all ready to go. You have all of the 4-inch and 1/2-inch blocks you need. Now it's just a matter of sewing them together. And you can go either way. Do a row, a column, or a row. It really doesn't matter. So I usually prefer to do this way. So I'm going to fold these over. Fold that over. And fold this over. So I prefer to do it this way. And then we're going to match. In this case, there's really, yep, down here, there's a little bit of seam there. And because of, you know, in this case, yeah, I might need to, I might want to, because of how this seam is, I might flip my seam, pressing my seam the other way. See, it all depends on how you sew them together. And then this one here, we're matching there. Yep, these are opposite. I wonder if I'm going to try something. Hopefully I won't confuse you. Yeah, I must have done it this way. So my seams match much better. Not so much. Yeah, it really, 6 of one, 6 of the other. I'm going to just tell you that. So we're going to go with this method, and I'm probably going to go to the iron and change the direction I press this seam so that I can get these seams to embed. And the same, not a lot I can do with that one, not a lot. Oh, I could switch that one. And even if you can't get the seams to lock and the opposite direction, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Biggest thing is make sure you get those seams matching. So basically, I'm going to put all this together. I'm going to pin them up, and I'm going to sew here, here, and here. So I'm going to sew all those, and then we come back and we line up the next and sew those. I now have each of those pairs of blocks sewn together. I came back here and made sure I laid them out. And now we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to put that over there, that there, and that there, and we're going to sew them. Now, what I discovered is most of the seams were actually pressed the wrong way that I needed. You know what? That's okay. Just repress them because you do want them pressed before you trim them down to a 5 or a 4.5-inch block. But if once you start putting them together, you find that you need to press them in the opposite direction, that is okay. Just do that. And if you decide in this case to leave it pressed that way and have 2 seams, overlap there, that's okay too. You know what? Do what works for you. I usually try and have them pressed opposite so they kind of lock together better in my seams. So I'm going to go do these. And then as you can see here, I did not press these yet. Usually I wait till I have each of my rows done, and then I kind of look at my seams and decide whether I'm going to, more than likely, I'm going to press the middle row to the outside and these to the inside. But we'll see when I get this last set of blocks sewed together so I have my row. I sewed my seams together. One thing you're going to want to use. All of these blocks have these lots of triangles and points in the corner, and sometimes those get pinched at the beginning when you're trying to get the sewing started right there on the point. And It's no fun. So use a leader. A leader is just a scrap of fabric. It's just a scrap of fabric. I don't know if you can see, mine has been used a lot. So you use it over and over, and then when it's too much, throw it out and grab another. It's just a scrap of fabric. But you start sewing on the fabric, and then, hang on here. You start sewing on this piece of fabric, and then it easily leads into your block. And so it makes the sewing easier. And then the purple thing. Yep, that's what it's really called. Thang, T-H-A-N-G, is very handy because sometimes these things do get a little tough, and this can help you push it through a little. And at the very end, it also can help you keep that fabric straight and not have it curve at the end when you need to get your fingers out of the way. So a leader and the purple thing come in handy. Okay, so I am gonna cut off my leader, cut threads, because I chain piece these, meaning I start my leader and then I just sew each of the blocks. Okay, so now making sure you get your rows in the right order, which I think will be pretty obvious because you want your hourglass in the middle. So there's your middle row. Have a pin? No. And then you've got your blue. There we go. There you go. And if you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, look, all my colors, all my colors, all my colors. And from here, this looks like a heart. Kind of cool. Now you're ready to sew your rows together. And that's why I look at it and go, okay, we have lots of seams here and here. So I really don't want my seams to be pressed to the inside. I'd rather take this and press them to the outside, which means these are going to be pressed to the inside. So I'm just finger pressing. Yep, and that means, yep, this one's going to have more. So with this type of block, there are lots of seams all over the place. So half a dozen one, 6 of the other, which direction you press, just kind of make it look nice and you'll be good to go. So all we have to do now is do this, and I'm going to pin this. I'm going to match my seams and pin them. I'm going to go sew this, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to put this on there and go sew that seam. And then we're going to have a finished block. Voila! There we have it. We have our card trick block. Yes, there are lots of seams in here. And I'll admit, even as I put it together, I was unhappy with how some of my points turned out. So I took out my seams and I made an adjustment and I resewed it. That is normal. And if you're okay with it being a little off, leave it there. This one here, yeah, my point's not perfect. I'm not ripping it out another time. Otherwise, I am pretty tickled with it. And now this is 12.5 inches. Perfect. Now, that was pretty easy because you were dealing with 5 and 5.5 inch squares and making them into half square triangles, hourglass, and what, tri-square triangles or something, squares. I don't know what they call that. Here is what you end up left over. You end up with those tri-squares. These are the opposite squares that you don't use. But you know what? Look at this. Let's see. Can we play with this? You could, oh, look at there. If you get enough of them, see, show that. You could do something interesting with it. There we go. There we go. You know what? You can do some interesting things with it. And who knows, if you're using the card trick in a big quilt, maybe these could be used within it. So you're gonna end up with 4 of these. Those are gonna be your leftovers. 1 extra hourglass. and 2 half square triangles with your different colors. Now, these could easily be made into 2 more hourglass blocks. Then you're going to end up with 3 extra hourglasses. Now, if you're making lots of blocks, those can just be used in your bigger block. These here, you aren't going to use at all. So overall, if you're going to need lots of blocks, generally speaking, you aren't going to end up with a lot of leftover. But keep them. They'll come in handy. Use them in your cornerstones. Who knows what you can put them to use for. But I found this way to be, excuse me, the most efficient way of creating this card trick block. I hope you found that helpful. You'll have to leave me a comment and let me know what you think. Take care and have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate it. If you want to make sure you don't miss a single video I published, hit the subscribe button below and then hit the bell icon. And that way you will be notified whenever I publish a new video. But you can also find me over on Facebook. Facebook.com/Wendy, the initial J, Haney. Or I have a Facebook group for those of you that love quilting, needlework, books, wine, and wellness. You can find that at facebook.com/groups/lifefulfilled. The name of the group is Life Fulfilled - Quilting, Needlework, Books, Wine, and Wellness. You can also find me over on my website, wendyjhaney.com. I will be doing more blogging over there eventually. As I get more of my videos done, I'll be blogging about those. But also, maybe you see some things that I'm making here and you're going, ooh, wow, I just don't want to make that myself. Well, a lot of those products will end up over there on the website that you can purchase for your friends and family. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I appreciate you watching.